Thank you very much for staying tuned. And those of you who are now joining us, of course, this is Facing the Nation. What you would have been viewing earlier is the public interest, a part of the public interest, last week's edition of the public interest, where His Excellency President David Granger addressed the main topic of social cohesion. But as you would have seen in the clip, he also gave some other journalists an opportunity to pose questions to him regarding not only social cohesion, but other matters. And I know some of you would have gotten a chance to view it earlier because it was shown on most of our local television stations here in Georgetown and even some out of the capital. Well, as I promised you earlier, of course, this is Education Month, so my guest is an appropriate one, no stranger to this program, no stranger to Guyana. Dr. Rupert Roopnaraine is the Minister of Education, and it is my pleasure to welcome him back to Facing the Nation today. Welcome back.
Thank you, Malika.
Great to have you again, even though it's been about 4 months since the APNU AFC government took office. This can never be too late, so I take this opportunity to publicly say congratulations to you on your appointment as Minister of Education, sir.
I keep telling people who congratulate me that what they should be doing is commiserating. Because of the nature of the task and the monumentality of it. Okay. There is a lot of work to be done.
Okay, great. We understand that, and really and truly, most of us would have seen that you have already, as we like to say in Guyana in colloquial terms, you have already begun rolling the ball. The ball is already rolling regarding fixing the education sector. Before we even talk about Education Month, the activities and what you aim to achieve out of this month, let's talk about fixing the education system. What is the most challenging thing that you've been faced with thus far since the new government took office?
Well, the first thing I did when I came in was to commission an audit of the schools, because I wanted to know an operational audit. I wanted to know what was happening literally in all the schools throughout the regions. I have begun to receive the audit reports, and from what I can see, there is everything to be done. You know, we are having a commission of inquiry into education, and that will be kicking off within a couple of weeks. We are right now establishing the commission. I'm trying to ensure that we put on the commission experienced educators, people who have been in the system, and people who are still active in the system. We want the commission to be able to go throughout the country, move into the regions, take evidence from parents, from teachers, from students, so that we can begin to craft an educational policy that is going to be, you know, evidence-based. We know that there are a lot of reforms that are needed, but these reforms must be based really on evidence. And there is much that is working in the educational system.
Okay.
But there is still a lot that needs to be fixed and needs to be done. I just come from rushed from a graduation ceremony at Coven John, where a number of the students are graduating. The Coven John Hindu College, you may know, has got one of the most outstanding records in relation to CSEC achievements and that kind of thing, and that's been going on for a number of years. And what I like about what they do at the school is that children get a very rounded education.
Okay.
You know, we tend to have a tendency, I'm afraid, to celebrate, you know, the number of passes children get. And some children are getting the most doing the extraordinary number of subjects and passing them. And, you know, while I don't want to suggest it is not commendable to be passing examinations, it is, of course. But we have to concentrate in the system. We have to concentrate on producing the complete child. I mean, you know, the complete 21st century child must be the aim of the education system. And to do that, it means we have to look at the syllabus that's being taught. I don't know when last we did a real syllabus review, but we need to review all of that. We need to review the readers. I have said that I wanted to see music back in the schools. And I find it difficult, you know, frankly, to imagine a school in which children are not singing. So I want to see music back in the schools in a serious way. And to see sports and physical education in the schools. Because, you know, we have to do more than, you know, regurgitate at examinations. We have to, in effect, concentrate in the schools on developing the really complete and rounded child. This has got to be the objective. to do that, what we need above all is the full participation of the parents. So I have been speaking everywhere I speak about this, about the need to strengthen the PTAs in all the schools and to let parents understand that PTAs are not there just to raise money to, arrange for a little better lunch or something. That is part of their work, but the PTAs have to take a more, I believe, have to play a more creative role in terms of what we're attempting to do. Get the parents fully involved. We want to make sure that every school is run by a very active PTA and that we establish, we do have a national coordinating committee of PTAs, which looks at PTAs throughout the school system.
Dr. Roopnaraine, if I can interject here, and because I want to stress a bit on this point about PTAs. You raise a very important point here, the Parent-Teacher Association. Now, the argument may present itself that, look, we're in a modern world, a faster world where sometimes the father is doing two jobs, the mother is doing one, but it's very demanding. So, and I think this is where the private school comes into play. They feel a little more comfortable in putting the child in private school, whereby they expect the teachers to, in a sense, fill their roles. I mean, this is not to negatively criticize the parents, but because of the demanding world that we're living in, their time, how do you work around that?
Well, I'm not unsympathetic to that, but I believe that in the vast majority of cases, I think that what you're describing does exist. I think there are genuinely cases where parents have a difficult time in relation to the commitments the mother already has, the commitments the fathers have. I have to say honestly, though, in the PTAs that I have met, it's mostly the mothers who come. Fathers, I made an open appeal to fathers to play play their full part in terms of the PTAs. At PTA meetings, it's really mostly women who are there. Fathers have to take up the challenge of really assisting the mothers and being the partner that they're meant to be in relation to the upbringing of the child and the education of the child. So I want to see more fathers involved in the PTAs, and I want to see the PTAs more involved in the designing of what it is we are attempting to do.
Okay. I know policymakers sometimes, because I myself try to rebuke people when they ask you, okay, well, Dr. Roopnaraine, well, I hope we see, or tell you, well, I hope we begin to see these changes and we begin to see the improvement by next week. So I know it's difficult when we ask policymakers, in the sense of a timeline, how soon can we expect? Because your response may be that it is ongoing. But the fact is, Dr. Roopnaraine, people are still complaining that the education sector is in a mess when the new government is going to do something. Do you believe that you're in a position, you have enough resources at least to begin to turn around the education sector within this first term of APNUFC in office?
I believe we are going to make some headway. I don't want to overpromise, but I do believe that we, first of all, have to ensure that we're going in the right direction. That is the key. And I believe that, we're talking, we've been in there for a few months. It's not nearly enough to begin to make the kind of changes we're talking about. And in the case of the education system, it's easier to maneuver a canoe than it is to maneuver the Titanic. I mean, the education system is colossal. And to do work in it and to really shift it around and get it refocused, get it redirected and so on is a really big challenge. It's not the work of a few weeks or a few months. And that's why I'm saying the early establishment of the Commission of Inquiry to begin to bring in the evidence that we need on which we can base policy and make reforms is going to be key. So I would say, if you wanted a timeline, I would say we need to complete our assessment of where things are. We would need about 6 months.
About 6 months. Okay.
At the end of that 6 months, I think we'd begin to be in a position where we can actually, make the kind of changes that are necessary.
See the results.
That doesn't mean that, for instance, yesterday I was driving past Charlotte Street and I saw one of the windows hanging off the UNESCO building. Now, the UNESCO building, you may know, in Rock Street, is one of the old colonial, rather beautiful buildings. And I passed and I saw this shutter hanging off, and I could not understand why this was so. So when I got back and I called them at UNESCO to find out, they said, well, they have been making applications to get this matter done, and so on and so on and so on. I attempted to move very quickly on it. I haven't passed there today, but I'm hoping this can be fixed within hours.
Okay.
Now, I'm saying to you that there are things that are manageable and can be done.
Immediately.
In the sense that they have schools, for instance, where children don't have enough desks and chairs. These are things that are fixable and can be done immediately and quickly. And I would say that there are a goodly number of things across the country in many schools which can be fixed without a whole lot of planning and delay. Can be done fairly quickly. Those things that can be done should be done. I had a walk around President's College the other day, and from the looks of things, some deterioration is there. The grounds are in a mess. I mean, it would not take very much to get a tractor in there and to get the fields mowed and that kind of thing, so that you're walking into a compound that is presentable. I haven't been there since President Granger, I think, paid a visit yesterday. I didn't go in today to see whether or not they had really made an effort for the president. But I'm curious to see, and I intend to stop in maybe later today to see what has happened there. There are things, certainly in terms of the physical plant of the schools, that can be fixed and can be done quickly.
Okay.
And those we intend to move on. The more profound changes we are talking about, curriculum change, going to CPC and making sure that what the teachers are receiving at CPC is what we want them to absorb in order to deliver in the schools, to harmonize what is happening at CPC with what we need in the school system. That kind of thing, which I believe is more profound work, will take more time.
You talked about CPC, and of course, this is obviously because they're neighbors. It takes me directly to the University of Guyana. Now, the complaints about the University of Guyana continue. They're numerous, but even without
Let me interrupt you to tell you that I have spent many months on the council of the University of Guyana. I have a fairly good sense of what is happening there, what needs to happen there. The first thing that needs to happen is that we need to put in place a council at the University of Guyana that is really going to have the kind of leadership that is going to move the university forward. We have been very fortunate in securing the agreement of Professor Nigel Harris, who is going to be the new chancellor of the university. We are going to be looking down the road at the entire leadership of the university. And you're quite right. I mean, the university will only produce, in the end, what they receive from the school system. So we have to ensure that what we are feeding into the university is really up to the standard that is required for people to absorb and benefit from a university education. What you find is that the university has been thinking for some time, maybe we need an extra course, an extra layer, a first year, in other words, where people will come and do the first year to ensure that they really are equipped to go on to a full university program. Now, this first year they're talking about doing is, of course, a corrective to what they have not received out of the school system. So what we have to do, I believe, is a first year university of that kind, maybe in the short term, a kind of remedy. It's not, to my mind, the whole remedy by any means, or a permanent solution. The permanent solution is to ensure that when the students graduate from high school and from secondary schools and they go into the university, they go into the university equipped to take advantage of a university education. And that's the responsibility of the school system. So we have to begin to understand that we are dealing with a system that goes from nursery all the way to tertiary. So they have to go through all the stages of the process, and they end up at the university. I'm not saying that, I've lost count of the number of studies that have been done at the University of Guyana. There have been studies on governance, studies, all kinds of things at the university. We don't need more studies. We need, the implementation of recommendations that have been made over the years in relation to the university. But again, I believe we're seeing incremental, improvements as we go along. And again, it's the kind of thing, the new council is going to be faced with big challenges. And I think I would like to see over the next 3 months the kind of decisions that come out of the council and what kind of difference it's going to make in relation to the university.
Dr. Roopnaraine, will raising the standard of the University of Guyana, and this is in terms of worldwide recognition, will that be a part of the plan? Because I'm asking to someone recently brought it to my attention that there are some colleges, some universities in the U.S. who do not necessarily recognize the degrees, the various qualifications from the University of Guyana. They basically tell you, well, you have to start all over again. Will that also be addressed?
Of course, this has to be addressed. We would like our degrees, when we give them, to be recognized, universally. We want to, when we put out our graduates from the University of Guyana, they must be graduates who can go on to further postgraduate study anywhere in the world. I mean, if we're not doing that, we're failing.
Okay.
So, to the extent, Malika, that we need to make improvements throughout the system, from top to bottom, is, not challengeable.
Okay.
We need to identify what the challenges are. We need to design the reforms that are going to be necessary and to have the courage to make the changes that need to be made. And I think that there are sufficiently committed people at the University of Guyana, within the departments, within the faculties, to make this happen.
Okay, all right. Viewers, if you're now tuning in, this is Facing the Nation. And of course, today I am talking with Dr. Rupert Roopnaraine. As you know, he is the Minister of Education. Our conversation comes at a very appropriate and an opportune time, as we are currently observing the month of education in our nation. Dr. Roop, we're in a season which I trust, and I know His Excellency Brigadier David Granger wants it and is working for it to be ongoing, a season of what is now really social cohesion, unifying our people, breaking all barriers, ethnic barriers, even to some extent political barriers, because regardless of which political party you belong to, development of our nation is supposed to be important to everyone. In saying that, I know in the last parliament, of course, in the last government, the PPPC administration, Ms. Priya Manik-Chan would have been the Minister of Education. I don't know now if she is the Shadow Minister of Education, but do you have plans, and have you yet begun to somehow stretch across the table, if you want to call it that, stretch across the table to involve her in terms of what will be happening with the Ministry of Education, with the education sector, and how she can possibly be involved?
That's interesting you should ask that. I had a phone call this morning from people going to Bartica, because there is, in fact, a program in Bartica having to do with, some of the difficult children. Mm-hmm. And the person asked me whether or not I felt they should invite Ms. Manik-Chan to the event. Mm-hmm. I said, of course, because she had much to do with developing the idea, and I have no difficulty whatsoever in involving and benefiting from the experience of people who have been on this road. They have been on the road, and I can tell you that we have taken in the departments of sports, culture, and youth sports and culture. And I happen to have extremely good relations with both Ms. Manik-Chan and Frank Anthony. And what I can tell you is that I know that they can both be relied on to help in getting things in order. There is no antagonism. I am a great believer in whether we call it social cohesion or, in the context of Guyana, it's really just good sense that we have to, in effect, take advantage of all the resources available to the nation. And I have I think, good fortune. I mean, the ministers who were in charge of these programs in the last government are people with whom I have good relations, and I know that I can rely on Dr. Anthony in relation to the Sport, Youth and Culture program that is going on, rely on him for advice, assistance, and similarly Ms. Manik-Chan. I don't think there's any difficulty whatsoever. And, I believe that the idea of social cohesion, the idea of reaching across the aisle, the idea of maximizing our natural resources, our nation's resources, is key to what we're attempting to do.
Okay, all right. Let's talk about the other part now, because really and truly, I did introduce him because that's what he is. I did introduce him as Minister of Education, but as you know, what happens now, youth, culture, and sport all, fall under Dr. Rupert Roopnaraine. Is it challenging at all for you to have to, and not only yourself, but your entire team, because I know you're a team person, you work with an entire team. Is it difficult for your team to be working along with education, culture, youth, and sport, all crammed in under one bracket, so to speak?
I don't believe that it is challenging, but it's not beyond our capacity. We have Minister Henry, who is in charge of the sports, youth, and culture departments, because they are now departments of the ministry. Mm-hmm. She is running those from the Main Street office. Mm-hmm. And I think that we have just put in place the Sports Commission, which is the commission that is going to, in effect, appoint the Director of Sports. We already have an acting Director of Sports, and presumably the commission will see the value of keeping him on. Mm-hmm. But we need to get that going. We are about to establish the Commemoration Commission, which is going to be the commission that's going to handle the 25th anniversary celebrations.
50th.
That's the 50th anniversary celebrations. That's major work that's facing us. I was called today by people who wanted to know what are we doing with the land, behind the 1763 monument,
yes,
all the way to the NCN. It's a lovely piece of land, as you know, and my own vision of it is to have an open park, to have a park where you have, benches, people come in the afternoon, it will be completely open and well kept and that kind of thing. But certainly to have no more cement.
Okay, green.
That's right. We want a green, open park. And I think it could be lovely. I mean, it would go from the Independence Arch all the way past the 1763 monument, all the way up and along, Hatfield Street, and keep it open. Maybe have a track where people can run in the afternoon.
Sport,
and that kind
exercise.
of thing. But that's my idea of the use for that place. In relation to the 50th anniversary, I think we should concentrate a lot of our energies on the Carifesta section from the National Park and really transform the entire Carifesta into essentially an extension of the 50th anniversary activities. It's going to be very exciting. It's going to be very challenging.
I was about to say there are some concerns, but let me be frank here. Mm-hmm. I was concerned that, when we do, Guyanese, we do understand the importance of celebrating our 50th anniversary next year, independence anniversary. But with that, I was concerned that maybe it would pull too much from our Mashramani celebrations in February, because I know there's been some maneuvering because of the celebration of the 50th anniversary. How much of an effect will preparations for the 50th anniversary have on Mashramani celebrations in February?
Well, let me be blunt. Mm-hmm. We are, in effect, going to put less energy into Mashramani next year and concentrate most of our energies on the 50th anniversary celebrations. That was contained specifically in the direction from the president. Okay. That, he himself felt that in this 50th anniversary year, we should really concentrate on the anniversary celebrations. Mm-hmm. That will mean putting a little less into Mashramani. It doesn't mean that we are, abandoning Mashramani, not by a long shot. It can't be abandoned. It's so much an important part of the national calendar. But we are going to put less emphasis on it. and
Okay.
put more of our energy and direction, more of our resources towards the 50th celebrations.
All right. I want to talk about something that our government, the new government, would have been criticized for over the past 4 months. And of course, I'm raising this with you because it, in a sense, falls under your ministry. That's youth, the absence of youth in senior positions in terms of the setting up of the cabinet and so on, and the fact that the Ministry of Youth has now become a department and it's under Dr. Rupert Roopnaraine. What would you say to, because people ask me why I keep bringing it up, because I know there are some young persons out there who are still concerned. So what are your sentiments to young people who still have a problem? And not only young people, there are some older folks who are concerned that, look, the ministry should not have been made a department. How can you convince them that Dr. Rupert Roopnaraine is able to handle this effectively?
Well, I think the only way to convince them is by results. I mean, you know, I share the view that we need to see more youth involved and more youth appointed to important positions in the administration. I would like to see them, you know, really come forward a lot more than they're, or being brought forward a lot more than they are. I'm very interested to see what is going to come out of the, you know, the Sports Commission, and to what extent, for instance, the, you know, the youth commission is going to, what they're going to come up with. My own feeling is, you know, that the youth are obviously far too important a section of society, just from the resource point of view. I mean, they're the people really with the energy, and the people with the you know, a lot of what we need. And I hate the feeling they must have, or I hate the fact that they have the feeling that somehow or the other we are not including them enough. If that's what they feel, then they're probably right. And we need to do more in relation to ensuring that the young people come forward with their ideas and play their full part. I would like to see more of them in the ministries. I would like to see more of them, you know, active and being appointed and all of that. I have no difficulty with any of that. In fact, I would say that were we to, you know, ignore or fail to take advantage of that important section of society, we would in fact be doing ourselves a lot of damage. And you know, we have enough problems without that.
Okay, let's talk about sport now. You did in a sense talk about the commission, and you're hoping to see good things come out of that commission. One of the problems we have in our country where sport is concerned, our athletes, regardless of what sport you're involved with, they go overseas and they do terribly when they have to compete with other nations, other countries. What does Dr. Roopnaraine see being put in place almost immediately to change that?
Well, I think that we have to maximize use of the athletic track that we have just, you know, spent a lot of money on. You know, I share the view of people that it could have been better located. To make it more centrally accessible to our athletes, but it is where it is.
Yes.
And what we should attempt to do is to really maximize the use of it. We are going to be able to deal with what you are raising, not by some magic potion we have for the current set of athletes, but we are going to be able to do what you're talking about doing if we put into the school system itself sports as a major component of the development of what I call, you know, the rounded child of the 21st century. Sports has to be an essential part of the school experience. And if we can do that, that's where your athletes come from. You identify talent very early. Talent is, you know, on display very early. I mean, I had the good fortune when I went to school that, you know, we had extremely vibrant inter-house competitions and inter-school competitions. I mean, the Jacob Cup and the Dias Cup between St. Stanislaus and QC these were like going to a test match at Border. I mean, they were fiercely contested, and I think that sports in those days had, I was talking about this earlier today, sports in those days had an importance in the school experience that they no longer have. And we need to bring that back.
Dr. Roopnaraine, maybe too, again, sometimes we say modern technology is good and it's bad because we stress modern technology is everywhere. So now instead of a child going out to play with a bat and to play with a ball, they probably prefer to sit on an iPod at a video game and do something online. Games are online. I can play a game or play games online. Do you think that we need to introduce special measures in schools where teachers and you did talk about bringing back physical education, where teachers and various lecturers ensure that students have at least an hour every day outside, away from the technology and the little gadgets?
Keeping them away from technology is a big challenge. I mean, you and I know that. I mean, if I want to fix my iPad or something like this, I call on my grandchild. I mean, this is their world. And we can't get away from this fact. What I think we have to do is to ensure that within the offerings that they have, we can't pretend that, look, from the time they get on the bus or they get in the car, they've got the machine open and they're working and they're communicating and they're doing what they're doing. There's no way we can prevent that from happening. That's an ongoing, element in it. You're probably already too old, but the fact is that's what's happening, and that's fine. I was saying this morning, that there's a lot that they miss as a result. For example, the fact that Google tells you everything you need to know is, to my mind, both a blessing and a curse. The blessing is that you have more information available to you than you've ever had.
At your fingertips.
At your fingertips. The curse is that you have no experience of books. You have no experience of living in the stacks of a library. You have no experience of chasing footnotes and chasing indices and a whole book experience that you're missing. This to me is a curse and something that I don't believe it's a loss. There's just no other way to put it. I'm sorry that children are not benefiting from this. I'm very happy that they're benefiting from what they're benefiting from. Don't make any mistake about it. And we have to ensure that, and this is where we need the parents. Mm-hmm. Parents have to make some rules at home to say, listen, there's so much TV time that's permitted and so much time that's required for reading. And that's where we need the parents. Because, as I say, we have the children for a few hours there. The parents have them the rest of the time. And they have to ensure that they help us in all of this. And they can help us by, for instance, insisting at home that children read an hour a day.
Yeah, just 1 hour is necessary.
1 hour a day reading is going to make the largest amount of difference.
Indeed.
And I think this is the way to counter, if you like, the negative effects of all of this available technology. You can't fight it. You have to, in fact, take the greatest advantage of it. It presents enormous advantages, and we have to take advantage of them. But we have to ensure that in so doing, we also begin to re-inculcate, if you like. And that may be running a little bit against the grain right now, but we have to re-inculcate in children a real love for books. And that is a challenge, but it's a challenge we must accept and recognize its necessity.
And I guess if we all work together, we can certainly conquer that challenge. Dr. Roopnaraine, we have to prepare to wrap up, but before we do that, earlier you did talk about some of the cultural aspects of your ministry as it relates to preparing for the 50th independence anniversary. But what I'm concerned with is that after the 50th anniversary, when we have a big splash, we have the big celebrations, which we deserve. Guyanese deserve that. What initiatives will be put in place to ensure that culture, embracing our culture and so on, stay with us, not only when there is an independence anniversary or a republic anniversary? What measures?
Well, what I hope will happen is that the anniversary celebrations are going to leave behind, if you like, institutions within the village communities and that kind of thing that will help us to perpetuate and to develop and to keep developing whatever, cultural experiences we've had at the time of the celebrations. I don't see the celebrations as happening in May and being all over.
Okay.
That's not how I see it. I see it in terms of really, look, we are going to be celebrating in May. The whole year, frankly, is our year of celebration of the 50th. So we have the months before May. We have the months after May. And what I would like us to leave behind, if you like, as a kind of legacy of the celebrations, of the anniversary celebrations, the legacy would be leaving behind, especially within the villages and the communities, institutions where ongoing work will proceed. You know, for instance, I remember years and years ago, Brother Guyana talking about writing the history of the villages. I don't know if you know his book on Buxton Friendship, but you know, the history of each village. Where's the history of Plaisance? Where's the history of Golden Grove? Where's the history of Den Amstel? You know, this is what we need. We need a lot of this work to be done. And my feeling is that as part of what is left out of the anniversary celebrations should be these institutions across the country that is going to continue the work of culture, the celebration of our culture, go on adventures of discovery, really, about ourselves and our history and so on. And if we can, during the celebrations in May, develop across the nation a thirst for more cultural experience, a thirst for more knowledge about where they are, who they are, how they got to be what they are, and so on. If we can inculcate that, I think we would have done a good thing.
I agree. I have to certainly agree. Dr. Rupert Roopnaraine, it certainly has been a pleasure having you here. And viewers, I must tell you, it was a task because this is a man who I always say that one of these days I am going to do a study and try to figure out a way to clone him so that while he is here, the other part of him, the other him will be somewhere else. That is just to explain to you how busy he is. And that is why I keep saying to you, be patient with the new government, be patient with the ministers. They're extremely busy. And if I am telling you sometimes it's difficult for me to get them, you would understand how difficult it is really for you to have face-to-face and one-on-ones with them. So once again, it was my pleasure. Dr. Rupert Roopnaraine, Minister of Education. Thank you very much for coming on Facing the Nation. And of course, that is going to do it for us on this edition of Facing the Nation. I am Malika Ramsey, as always, urging you to be good Guyanese citizens. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and of course, join me again next time. Goodbye.